The rain had stopped just before sunset, leaving the street quiet and heavy with wet air. The small house at the corner had a narrow porch, and a single yellow light glowed above the door. Inside that house lived a little girl named Mia, who was sitting on the floor tying the laces of her worn shoes. She was getting ready to step outside when she heard a strange sound drifting through the open window. It was not loud, but it carried a deep sadness that made her pause. The sound came again, a soft cry mixed with a weak whine. Mia slowly stood and walked toward the door, her heart beating faster without knowing why. When she opened the door, she froze. A large police dog stood on the porch, soaked from the rain and shaking slightly. His fur clung to his body, and his eyes looked tired and full of fear. The dog did not bark or move forward. He simply looked at Mia and let out another quiet cry. Mia felt a chill move through her arms, even though the air was warm. She had seen police dogs before from far away, strong and confident, but this one looked broken and desperate. She knelt down slowly, careful not to scare him. The dog took a small step closer and lowered his head. Mia noticed the badge clipped to his collar, shining faintly under the porch light. Her breath caught in her chest as she realized this was not a lost animal. This dog belonged to someone, and something was very wrong. The dog gently pushed an object toward her with his nose. It slid across the wooden porch and stopped near her knee. Mia picked it up with shaking hands and saw that it was a small radio. The device made a faint crackling sound, then went quiet again. The dog let out another cry, louder this time, and his legs trembled as if he was struggling to stay standing. Mia swallowed hard and looked around the empty street. No cars passed, and no neighbors were outside. The evening felt too still, like the world was holding its breath. She pressed the button on the radio, unsure of what she was doing. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a broken voice pushed through the static, weak and distant. Mia could not understand every word, but she heard enough to make her face turn pale. The voice sounded hurt and strained, and then it faded away completely. The radio went silent again. Mia stared at the dog, her hands shaking as she held the device. She knew then that the dog had not come by accident. He had come for help. The dog looked up at her with eyes full of trust and fear. He sat down suddenly, like he had been trained to do, but his body still shook from the cold and worry. Mia reached out and gently touched his wet fur. It was warm beneath her fingers, and she felt his breathing slow just a little. Inside the house, a clock ticked softly, reminding her that time was passing. Mia stood up and glanced back through the open door. She knew she should call for an adult, but her legs felt heavy, and her mind raced with thoughts she had never had before. She was just a little girl, but the weight of the moment pressed down on her like a storm cloud. The dog suddenly stood again and turned his head toward the street. He took a step forward, then looked back at Mia, whining softly. The sound was not loud, but it was filled with urgency. Mia understood without words that the dog wanted her to follow. Her heart pounded as she grabbed her jacket from the chair near the door. She slipped it on quickly and stepped back onto the porch. The dog waited, his eyes fixed on her face. When she closed the door behind her, he moved closer, brushing against her leg as if to make sure she was really coming. The street lights flickered on as the sky darkened. The dog began walking slowly at first, staying close to Mia, guiding her down the sidewalk. His steps were careful, but there was a steady pull in his movement, like he knew exactly where he needed to go. Mia followed, her shoes splashing softly against the wet ground. As they moved farther from the house, Mia noticed small drops of water falling from the dog's fur, mixing with the rain on the pavement. She wondered how long he had been out there alone. She wondered where his partner was and why the dog had chosen her porch out of all the others on the street. The dog stopped suddenly and looked back at her again. He let out another low cry, softer now, but still full of pain. Mia reached down and placed her hand on his head, offering comfort even though she was scared herself. She felt a strange sense of responsibility settle inside her, something new and heavy but also strong. In that moment, Mia understood that this night would change her forever. A police dog had trusted her enough to ask for help. Somewhere nearby, someone was waiting, hurt and alone. The quiet street, the dark sky, and the steady presence of the dog made everything feel unreal. Yet Mia took another step forward, knowing she could not turn back now. The dog led Mia down the quiet street with steady steps, his body low but his purpose clear. The houses around them looked asleep, their windows dark and silent. Mia kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting someone to stop her or call her name. The night air felt thick, and every small sound made her heart jump. After a few minutes, the dog slowed near a house with a porch light still on. Mia recognized it as the home of her neighbor Anna, who often helped people on the street. The dog stopped and looked at Mia, then gently pulled his head toward the house. Mia understood and hurried up the steps, knocking hard on the door. Anna opened the door with surprise on her face, but her expression changed the moment she saw the police dog. Mia spoke quickly, her words tumbling over each other as she held out the radio. Anna listened carefully, her face growing serious with every second. The dog sat beside Mia, quiet but alert, his eyes moving between them. Anna took the radio and pressed the button, holding it close to her ear. Static filled the space, then faded again into silence. Anna did not hesitate. She reached for her phone and made a call, speaking in a calm but urgent voice. Mia stood still, her hands clenched together, watching the dog as if he were the only solid thing in the world. When Anna finished the call, she grabbed her jacket and told Mia to stay close. The dog stood up immediately, tail low but ready, as if he knew help was coming. They stepped back outside, the street now darker as clouds covered the moon. The dog began moving again, this time faster, pulling them toward the edge of the neighborhood. The sidewalk ended near a narrow path that led into a wooded area behind the houses. The dog stopped at the entrance and let out a low cry. Mia felt fear rise in her chest, but she stayed close to Anna, who held her hand firmly. Together they followed the dog into the trees, their steps slow and careful. The ground was soft and muddy, and Mia almost slipped more than once. The dog moved with purpose, weaving between trees and low branches. His breathing grew heavier, but he did not slow down. Mia could feel how important this was to him, as if every step carried the weight of his missing partner. Suddenly the dog stopped and lowered his head. He pawed gently at the ground, near a fallen branch. Mia leaned closer and saw something metallic caught in the mud. Anna picked it up carefully, and her breath caught. It was a police badge, scratched and bent, its surface dull under the weak light. Mia felt her stomach twist as she looked at the badge. The meaning was clear even to her young mind. Someone was hurt nearby, and time mattered. The dog let out a soft cry again and looked deeper into the woods, his body tense and ready to move. Far away, the sound of sirens began to rise, faint at first but growing stronger. The dog lifted his head, ears twitching, and let out a sharp bark filled with relief. Mia felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear now but from the heavy feeling of hope mixed with worry. Lights soon appeared between the trees as officers arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Anna spoke to them quickly, explaining everything while pointing at the dog and the badge. The officers listened closely, their faces serious, then nodded and moved into action. The dog rushed forward, leading them deeper into the woods without hesitation. Mia watched as they disappeared among the trees, her heart pounding with every second that passed. She clung to Anna's side, feeling small and powerless yet knowing she had done something important. Minutes felt like hours as they waited. The woods were filled with distant voices and movement, but Mia could not see what was happening. She stared into the darkness, thinking about the broken voice on the radio and the way the dog had looked at her with trust. Then a shout broke through the night, strong and clear. An officer had been found alive. Relief washed over Mia so suddenly that her knees felt weak. Anna knelt beside her, holding her close as the tension slowly eased. The dog's barking echoed through the trees, filled with joy and urgency. He disappeared again, racing toward the sound of voices. Mia smiled through her tears, knowing he was finally going back to the one he had been searching for. As more officers moved past them, one stopped and gave Mia a gentle nod. He told her she had been brave and that her quick action mattered more than she could understand. Mia nodded back, her words caught in her throat. The night no longer felt as heavy as before. The trees still stood dark and tall, but the fear that once filled the air had softened. Mia stood quietly, watching the lights move deeper into the woods, knowing that the hardest part was almost over. In her heart, she felt a change she could not yet name. A simple evening had turned into something much bigger. A police dog had trusted her, and she had answered. That thought stayed with her as the night slowly began to calm. The forest felt alive with movement as more lights filled the dark spaces between the trees. Mia stood close to Anna, her small hands gripping the edge of Anna's jacket. Voices echoed from different directions, calm but fast, as the officers worked together. The dog's barking could be heard deeper inside, sharp and full of emotion. Mia tried to imagine what the dog was seeing now. She thought about his tired eyes on her porch and how they had looked filled with fear and hope at the same time. Now those same eyes were leading trained people toward his partner. The thought made her chest feel tight but warm. A few minutes later, the dog came running back toward them for a moment. His fur was still wet and muddy, but his movements were stronger now. He stopped near Mia and looked at her, his tail wagging slowly. Mia knelt down without thinking and placed her hand on his head. She whispered soft words, even though she did not know if he understood them. The dog stayed for only a second before turning and running back again. Mia watched him disappear between the trees, knowing he was needed more there than with her. The forest air felt colder now, or maybe it was just the long wait. Soon, the sound of a stretcher being moved reached Mia's ears. The voices became clearer, and the lights grew brighter. Officers appeared between the trees, walking carefully as they guided a stretcher forward. On it lay a man in a police uniform, his face pale but calm. The dog walked beside the stretcher, never leaving it. His head stayed close to the man's hand, and he let out soft sounds that felt like relief. Mia felt tears rise again as she watched. She understood then that the dog had been holding on to fear alone for a long time. The officers passed by slowly, giving Mia a brief glance. One of them smiled gently at her, as if to say everything was going to be all right. Mia stood still, her heart beating fast but steady now. The stretcher was moved toward the waiting vehicles, and the forest slowly grew quieter. Some officers stayed behind to gather items and check the area. Others followed the stretcher, their lights fading into the distance. Anna squeezed Mia's shoulder and told her she had done something very important. Mia nodded, though the words felt too big to fully understand. She just knew that if she had not opened the door, things might have ended very differently. As they waited, the dog returned once more. This time he walked slowly, his body relaxed for the first time that night. He stopped in front of Mia and sat down. His tongue hung slightly from his mouth, and his eyes no longer carried panic. Mia smiled at him, feeling a deep connection that words could not explain. She reached out and gently brushed mud from his fur. The dog leaned into her touch for a moment, then stood as an officer approached. The officer knelt beside Mia and thanked her again. He explained in simple words how the dog had broken away to find help when the radio failed. He told her that the dog chose the first house with a light on. That house had been hers. Mia listened quietly, her mind replaying the moment she opened the door. It felt strange to think how something so small could mean so much. The officer stood and walked away, leaving Mia with a feeling of quiet pride. The forest no longer felt frightening. The darkness seemed softer, less heavy. Mia realized the fear she felt earlier had changed into something else, something stronger. After some time, Anna said it was time to go back home. Mia looked once more toward the trees, hoping the officer and the dog would be all right. She took a deep breath and nodded. They walked back through the path together, the night now calm and still. The street lights welcomed them as they returned to the neighborhood. The houses looked the same as before, but Mia felt different inside. When they reached Mia's porch, she turned and looked back down the street. She knew this night would stay with her forever. A police dog had trusted her when he had nothing left. She had listened. As Mia stepped inside her house, the quiet felt strange. The clock still ticked, just like before. Yet everything had changed. She sat down and held her hands together, thinking of the dog's eyes and the sound of his cry. In her heart, she felt something new grow. It was not fear anymore. It was the knowledge that even small people can make a big difference. And that thought stayed with her as the night slowly passed. Morning light slowly filled the street, washing away the heavy feeling left from the night before. Mia woke up early, her mind still holding on to every moment that had happened. She sat on her bed for a long time, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. Everything looked normal, yet nothing felt the same inside her. She walked to the window and looked outside. The porch where the police dog had stood was dry now, as if the rain and fear had never been there. Mia rested her forehead against the glass and thought about the dog's eyes, the way they had searched for help without fear of trusting a stranger. Down the street, a vehicle slowly approached. Mia noticed it right away and felt her heart jump. She hurried downstairs and stepped onto the porch, her hands clasped together. The vehicle stopped nearby, and a police officer stepped out, walking carefully as if he did not want to startle anyone. Beside him walked the police dog. His fur was clean now, and his steps were strong and calm. When Mia saw him, a smile spread across her face without her even thinking. The dog looked up and wagged his tail the moment he noticed her. The officer stopped a few steps away and knelt down so he was at Mia's level. His face showed tiredness, but there was warmth in his eyes. He thanked Mia again, speaking slowly and clearly so she could understand. He explained that he was the officer who had been hurt, and the dog beside him was his partner. Mia listened closely, her eyes moving between the man and the dog. She felt shy but proud at the same time. The officer told her that when he fell and could not move, the dog stayed with him until the radio stopped working. When help did not come, the dog made a choice to leave and find someone who could help. The officer said the dog followed his training but also followed his heart. He said that dogs know who they can trust. Mia felt her chest warm as she heard those words. She reached out slowly, and the dog stepped closer, resting his head gently against her knee. The officer took out a small item from his pocket and held it in his hand. It was a simple badge, smaller than the one found in the woods. He told Mia it was a thank you gift, something to remember the night she helped save a life. He pinned it gently onto her jacket. Mia touched the badge and felt her eyes fill with tears. She did not speak, but she nodded, understanding how important the moment was. The dog sat proudly beside her, his tail wagging softly. Neighbors began to step outside their homes, drawn by the quiet scene. Some whispered to each other, others smiled. Mia felt a little nervous with the attention, but the officer placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He told everyone that bravery does not always come from strength or size. Sometimes it comes from listening and caring. Mia felt those words settle deep inside her. After a while, the officer stood and prepared to leave. The dog gave Mia one last look, his eyes bright and calm. He let out a happy sound and turned to walk beside his partner. As they walked away, Mia stayed on the porch, watching until they were out of sight. The street returned to its usual quiet state. Birds chirped, and the day continued like any other. Mia went back inside the house and sat at the table. She held the badge in her hands, turning it slowly. She thought about how one choice can change everything. She thought about how the night had tested her in a way she never expected. Later that day, Mia walked to school. The streets felt different now, smaller somehow. She noticed people more, the way they moved and looked at each other. She felt more connected to the world around her. In class, she found it hard to focus. Her mind kept returning to the forest, the lights, and the sound of relief when help arrived. She realized that courage does not always feel loud or bold. Sometimes it feels quiet and scared but still moving forward. When school ended, Mia walked home slowly. The porch light was off, but she remembered how it had guided the dog to her door. She understood that being open and kind can matter more than anyone realizes. That evening, Mia sat on her porch as the sun set. The air was calm, and the street felt safe. She looked down at the badge once more and smiled. She knew she would carry this story with her forever. Not as a moment of fear, but as a moment of trust. A police dog had believed in her, and she had answered. As darkness gently returned to the sky, Mia stood up and went inside, feeling stronger than she had ever felt before. The world felt a little brighter, and she knew that even small hearts can hold great courage.